Okay, I think we are live. Let's just make sure we're on Facebook. Yes, we are live.
Well, welcome everyone. Thanks for jumping on tonight. We have an amazing speaker that I know really well. She's been, had decades of experience in parenting, and by nature, she's a school teacher, had a Bachelor of Health, a Bachelor of Education, and has written 6 books on various subjects to do with children and parenting, and now has become or re-become a Nurtured Heart Approach facilitator, master trainer. She's been doing these sorts of workshops for over 20 years, and I recall doing them in front of hundreds of parents throughout the country. She's been on radio, she's been on TV, featured in different magazines and newspapers, and regular podcast speaker. So I'd love to introduce Lillian Reiki, parenting strategist.
Thank you so much, Nathan, and welcome everybody who is on the Facebook page live. I'm just going to share my screen. Nathan, if you can confirm you can see that, that would be awesome.
Yep, looks great.
Fantastic. So thank you to everybody who is on live. I know a couple of people are trying to get on the page as we speak. If you're catching the replay, a huge welcome to you as well. So the title for today's mini masterclass is, Are You Over the Yelling, Nagging and Threats to Get Your Kids to Listen? So that may be you, it may not be. You may be on tonight just to see if you can learn something new and something that will help you with your parenting relationships, or you might be in that position where you are over the yelling, nagging and threats to get your kids to listen. So we're going to make this a mini masterclass tonight. It is my absolute endeavour to get this done for you in 60 minutes. So I'm going to rock and roll with it. And once again, thank you so much for jumping on this evening. And I really do congratulate you for taking your time out, because you really could have said, no, I'd rather watch Netflix or TV, or I'm too tired or what have you, but you've made the effort to listen in live. So truly appreciate you for that. Please do drop in the comments so we know you're here. Say hello, let us know where you are calling in from tonight, or why you're here, or if this is your first masterclass with us, or maybe you've heard us before, but we just really want to acknowledge you for being here tonight. And you're here for a reason, right? You're here for a reason. So if I had my magical parenting wand, and there's a picture of one there, but I have my beautiful own quartz, crystal and garnet parenting wand here. So if I had my magical parenting wand and I would wave that over you and your family, what would you most love us to magically do or solve for you? Or what would you like to most get out of this masterclass tonight? Now, keep in mind, it is just a mini one, so we're going to be covering things reasonably quickly. However, if you are on live, I do really suggest that you stick around, because at the end of this presentation, Nathan is going to be doing a prize draw, and we are going to be giving away one of our holiday vouchers valued up to $1,000. Now, you might not be able to travel right now at the moment, but I'm sure at some stage you would love to do a little trip away, even if it's just close by where you live. So for those of you who don't know me or don't know me very well, I'm a parenting strategist, as Nathan said. I'm a mum of 2 adult sons. The youngest is the topic of my 6 books that Nathan referred to, and you're going to hear a lot about him this evening. I'm a primary school teacher. I have a Bachelor of Education. My most prized degree, however, is the degree in TTP, which is Tried and Tested Parenting. That is what I really have more pride in, if that makes sense. I've been a parenting strategist and coach for over 20 years, author of 6 books written between 2003 and 13. I'm a Nurtured Heart Approach advanced trainer. I've done seminar and workshops to many thousands of people over the years on my own with my husband, Andrew, and with Nathan. I've been a parenting specialist on weekly radio, featured on TV and many magazines and newspapers. And for those of you in Australia, you will know Today Tonight. So I've been on that twice. And also more recently, a sought after podcast guest all around the world. I've been speaking in places like India and Pakistan and Africa and the UK and Ireland and America and of course Australia. So having lots of fun with that and getting to know some awesome people around the world who also are passionate about parenting. So I'm going to run through our story very, very quickly. Many of you may have already heard this, but just for the benefit of those who haven't heard, I'll run through it with you. So as I said, I have two now adult sons. Our second son was born 7.5 years after his big brother Nathan, who was a quiet and passive child. The birth of my second son was very, very fast and very, very stressful. So we basically had challenges from birth. If he wasn't breastfeeding or sleeping, he was just screaming. He was irritable, unsettled, not sleeping. He wasn't a happy chappy at all. We had an unhappy baby, we had an unhappy big brother, and we had very stressed parents, I can tell you. In the chat box, let me know on the Facebook page if you can relate to any of this. Please do give some feedback as we're going. Nathan may be able to see the feedback as we're going, but it would be great to have your feedback as I'm sharing with you. So what happened in childcare? He went to 5 childcare centres over 2 years. So he grew up in a large country town in northern Victoria where there were 5 childcare centres, and he actually got to have a stint in all of those 5 childcare centres, which was pretty cool. He was diagnosed over that period of 2 years by a paediatrician, psychologist, psychiatrist, and various other practitioners with childhood depression, ODD and ADHD even before he started school. And the interesting thing is, and the challenge for us at that time, was that medication was recommended by all of them. And that really just was not a path that we wanted to take. So this was a typical day of his in childcare centre. Childcare centre number 4. So we did get asked to leave this childcare centre because of his behaviour, but this, just things like he knocked a container on the floor, went to the collage table, knocked over the things the children were making. So these notes came directly from his carers. He went to the block corner, knocked down a building, returned to the book corner, threw books off the shelf, began throwing carpet squares out of the crate. He then slammed the door and banged his head against the door, started messing up the tables the children had tidied, grabbed a child's reading glasses and bent the arms of the glasses with his hands. He picked up a book and threw it forcibly at another child, hitting him in the face. Was removed to another timeout room where he slammed the door and threw all of the toys that had been stacked up against the wall. He then threw a wooden chair at the wall, causing a hole. I even told us what size it was, 6 centimetres by 2.5. And once removed from that room, he was taken to the yard where he pulled out a plant and threw it on the ground. And that was all before lunch. So as you can imagine, very stressful times. He then started school. He looks happy enough there, but it was a very, very stressful year. He spent more time out of the classroom in time out than he did learning, which of course, wasn't positive for him, for his teacher, for us, or even for the other kids in his classroom. He did have some happier days, thankfully. He went to a Steiner school from year 1 to 5, and Steiner is a very alternative way of schooling, and he actually had a reasonably good time there. He did break his teacher's nose in grade 1. However, there's a story to that. But he had a reasonably good few years there because they really, treated him as an individual and really cared for him and loved him and nurtured him. They were just the most amazing teachers. That school unfortunately closed down due to financial reasons. He then went to another local primary school, and then we moved to Queensland. So that was all in Victoria. He then started in another primary school for year 6. That didn't go so well, so we decided to move him yet again for year 7 into a private school, a private college, a very expensive private college, might I add. And in this school, he had the school record for something. And, you might be thinking, well, that's great, Lillian, he had a school record. However, it wasn't for something positive. He had the most red cards of anybody in the school, and he was only in year 7. So they went from a yellow to a green to a blue to a red discipline card. So it was all based on focusing on the things he wasn't doing right. So he was actually asked to leave that school at the end of first term in year 8. I can still clearly recall the elderly woman's female, voice, basically saying if we didn't take him out of the school, then he would be expelled. So from there, he went to another regular secondary school. Things went from bad to worse. So, this was the most stressful time in our parenting journey, and he really did revolt. And if you look at the word actually revolt, it's quite interesting because the word love is in the middle of the word revolt backwards. So what kids who revolt are doing is seeking love, attention, relationship, something that, that is meaningful to them. So age 13 to 15 were the absolute toughest times in our parenting career. We had 10x the challenges at 13 to 15 than we did at age 3 to 5. As I said, 2 secondary schools in 2 years, non-attendance or suspended for more days than he attended. He had a terrible reputation with teachers. We had so many calls from the school, we knew the school number off by heart. He was labelled as a troublemaker at school, mixing in the wrong crowds, getting into inappropriate behaviours and in trouble with the police. He left school at 15 with a very, very poor school attendance and grades. And then our beautiful angel Frank stepped in. I love how the universe, we connected with Frank. That's another whole story that I'll tell another day. But we had actually just started mentoring with Frank, and this incident happened. And I haven't told this in a masterclass before, and I thought I'd share it tonight just for you to be able to understand how yelling, nagging and threats and upside down parenting can really lead to very challenging and disconnected relationships. And it certainly did in our family. So I recall this particular day, I got yet another phone call from the school saying that our son was in trouble. He had been caught doing this and that and the other. And basically that they said that they had told Caleb we needed to get your parents up to the school, that you were going to be suspended. And consequently, he decided to tell them what they could do with that and took off. So they rang us to tell us what had happened and basically said, your son has taken off. He's not at school. We don't know where he is. So we're just letting you know what's happened. So, of course, I went into panic mode again, tried to call him because he did have a mobile back in those days, no answer. So I thought I'd wait a while because this was just in the afternoon before school had finished. Thought I'd wait to see if he'd turn up. He did actually turn up not too long after he normally gets home, actually. And what did I do? Did I say, how was your day, Caleb? Let's sit down and talk about what happened. I'd love to hear your side of the story. Is that what I did? No. Guess what I did? Yelling, nagging, threats, total upside down parenting. We had just started mentoring with Frank, not enough to remind me of the upside down parenting. So as soon as he walked in the door, I just went straight into, how can you continue doing this? We got another phone call from the school. You're going to be suspended. What did you do? Can't you behave? Like, you're grounded forever. Like I can remember threatening him and yelling, and didn't even give the poor kid a chance to express himself or to let me know what had happened. I feel so regretful about that. I feel so like I was so upside down, but I just didn't know what I didn't know, right? And so if you've done something like that, please don't feel bad, because I think in our parenting career we all have times where we're very regretful. So basically what happened was he took off, and I thought he'd just come home for dinner. I thought he'd get hungry and come home for dinner. My husband got home from work. We waited a bit longer trying to call him, and we started to get a little bit concerned about where he could be or what he was doing. And so my husband decided to jump in the car and drive around the neighbourhood looking for him. I stayed at home in case he turned up at home. And anyway, cut a long story short, for well over an hour, my husband was driving around. He drove past an area where he knew we used to hang out, and bumped into a kid that looked a bit familiar and said, hey, have you seen Caleb around? Do you know my son Caleb? And the kid basically said, yes, I do. And I saw him a while ago and he was not in a very good way, but I don't know where he is. So obviously Andrew went into panic mode and kept driving around to see if he could find him. A little while later, saw some police pulled over on the street, and went over to see what was going on there. And the police were looking down at this kid in a drunken stupor in the gutter. And guess whose kid that was? It was ours. He was so out of it, don't know what he'd taken, consumed. He was so out of it, he didn't know his name, he didn't know where he was, he couldn't identify himself to the police, and the police were just kind of wondering what to do with him. Luckily, my husband turned up and the police basically said, take him home. So that situation was extremely stressful. When he came home, he was very out of it. Like, we literally couldn't communicate with him. So we bought a mattress downstairs because the bedrooms were upstairs, laid him on that because we wanted to be able to watch him. He was vomiting. It was not very pleasant. And we called our mentor, Frank, and we spoke to him, and he gave us some guidance. And it took nearly 2 days for him to be coherent and like to sober up, nearly 2 days. And when he did, we chose, because of the conversation we had with Frank, not to yell, nag or threaten. We chose to be his biggest supporter and fan, to let him know we were here to help and support him and to get him through this. And that mindset change of ours as parents was the beginning of our healing journey. That moment in time when he was expecting us to go ballistic and ground him forever and, you know, carry on, and what did you take and why did you do it? You know, we didn't do any of that. It was difficult not to, but we took on board the advice that we got from Frank, and we decided to turn our parenting right side up and to focus on the blessings, to focus on the fact that we were grateful that he was alive, that he was home, that he was okay, you know, that things could improve, and that we were determined to improve them. So that really was where our healing journey really did start. His relationships with his big brother Nathan improved. They were not good prior to that, I can guarantee you that. They started, you know, getting on a lot better. That was a very, very fractured brotherhood there. It was not positive at all prior. However, our youngest son actually started to look at his family a bit differently because we were treating him differently. There's a bit of a story between then and when he got into business with his dad. I'll tell it really quickly. So basically, from that suspension at school, which they suspended him for 20 days for doing a couple of silly things that a whole bunch of other kids were doing. But of course, he was the one who got picked on, and he was the only one who got suspended for 20 days. And basically, we, through mentoring with Frank again, we allowed Caleb to make the decision not to go back to school. And that was really tough for me as a teacher and as a mum of a 15-year-old. We did have a couple of conditions, right? He had to either get further education or a job, which he did. He did both, actually. He went to TAFE, got his next high school year completed in TAFE. He went into a pre-apprenticeship course. He got himself an apprenticeship in plumbing. He did 3 years of that until the business owner, his business folded because of personal reasons. And then he found himself without a job. And somehow my husband and he concocted this idea of, well, why don't you now become an electrician? So he'd already done 3 years of plumbing. He applied as an electrical apprentice. He actually passed the test with flying colours. We actually didn't know how intelligent he was because he'd never had a school report that indicated that he was, because basically he was, from all of his high school years, he mucked up the whole time. So there was no evidence of us knowing that he was a bright, intelligent young man. So Andrew and Caleb have now been in business together. This is coming up to 10 years in December. And they're business partners. So it's not father and son, boss and you know, employee. They've been business partners for day one, and they have a very, very successful business because of the way that they interact together and because of their business ethics, and people just absolutely love them. So that's my beautiful family there, my husband and I. That's my youngest son there with his beautiful partner, Amy, and of course, Nathan, you will meet in a little while. So that's our quick story. And what I want to do now is touch on something I'm really, really passionate about. If you've listened into our other masterclass or any of my other interviews, etc., you'll know that I'm very passionate about nurtured heart approach. What actually happened was in 2013, I was at a youth networking event, and I got chatting to a psychologist there, and we were chatting, and I asked her what she did, and then she said, asked me what I did. And when I shared our story and told her about our journey, she goes, "Oh, I've just heard about that. That's the nurtured heart approach." And I'm like, "What's the nurtured heart approach? I've never heard of it. This is the Lily and Ricky approach." And anyway, as a consequence of that discussion, I wrote it down. I went home and Googled, and I literally spent about 4 hours online in awe, reading, watching videos, going, "Oh my gosh, this is amazing." And it was so in alignment with what we had learned from Frank. So I became a certified trainer in 2014, which was the first time Howard Glasser, the founder, came to Australia, and I became certified. And then just earlier this year, I became an advanced trainer. That was quite an interesting thing to do, because I had to do it online through America. So 6 nights in a row between 12:30 a.m. and 10 a.m. in the morning. But gosh, was it worth it. So I'm so glad I did it. So Howie actually has sent us a personal message. I asked him if he would send a personal message to us. So I'm just going to play that for you now.
Hi, Lillian. Hi, my friends in Australia. I am so happy you found your way to the Nurtured Heart approach. You're in the best of hands, and I hope you enjoy the ride. It will be revealing and fun and empowering.
Thank you, Howie.
Be well.
Howie actually reminds me of Frank in so many ways. So isn't it interesting that we connected with Howie after we've never met Frank in person. So we only ever spoke on the phone, and we've only seen pictures of him online and in a video, but there's a lot of similarities there. Okay, so I'm going to do a really quick overview of the Nurtured Heart approach tonight. If you'd like a little bit more detail, we did a bit more detail in the masterclass that we did a couple of weeks ago. And of course, in our upcoming course that we're starting next week, we will be going into lots of detail. But the Nurtured Heart approach was originally started almost 30 years ago for transforming the intense and challenging child. But really, we've discovered it's all about helping all children to flourish. So its core methodology is based on 3 stands. Stand 1 is absolutely no, stand 2 is absolutely yes, and stand 3 is absolutely clear. So I'll just quickly run through those for you, just a really quick overview. So stand 1, absolutely no. I refuse to energize negativity. So this is with your parenting and with all of your relationshiping. Of course, we're talking specifically about parenting, but it's also with your relationship with your partner, your peers, your friends, your other family members, but of course, most importantly, your children, whether you're a parent or an educator. I will not reward negativity, disruptions and outbursts that distract children from their greatness with elevated energy, connection or relationship. And I will be intentional to watch where my energy is flowing. And you may have heard of this saying, where attention goes, energy flows, and of course, results show. So that's stand 1. Stand 2, absolutely yes. I relentlessly create and energize positivity and success. I energize and nurture firsthand experiences of success, and I will work immediately to identify, describe, and express appreciation for steps, large and small, a child takes in manifesting his or her positive choices and intrinsic greatness. And I will actively initiate opportunities for children to be successful. So when we go through the course, we teach you all of the different recognition techniques and the way to speak to your children. It's almost like learning another language. It really is, because even though we're using English as such, but we're using the words in a very different and very, very powerful way. Stand 3, absolute clarity or absolutely clear. I set and enforce clear limits and clear consequences in an unenergized way, because kids need clarity, right? They need to know that the line is the line and the rule is the rule, that there's no fuzziness. I will consistently enforce rules and provide immediate consequences each time a rule is broken by way of a simple form of a consequence called a reset. And we go into a lot of detail about that in the course. I will recognize the child in the moment they have reset and create that next moment as an opportunity for success. So once again, it's not about punishing, putting them in timeout for 5 minutes. It's about having them do a very quick reset, whatever that takes for them, and then looking for them to come back into a positivity and success and to help them do that. Now, Howie loves to talk about stories when he's teaching Nurtured Heart Approach. So I'm just going to share the story of Toys R Us. Now, did you know that we are our children's most exciting toys? And their most exciting toy can vary depending on who they're with. So if they're with mum's probably likely to be favourite toy. It could be dad, it could be grandma, it could even be teacher or childcare worker, or whoever the adult of influence is at the time is most likely to be their favourite toy. One day mum could be the favourite toy, next day dad could be, or it could be somebody else. But as human beings, we have a zillion different ways to be interesting, right? And if you think about it, what do kids do when they get a new toy? They enthusiastically explore it, they want to know what it has to offer, and they find features that are compelling or exciting or fun. And then sometimes they also find features that are a bit boring, right? And once they designate a feature as really boring, they kind of write it off, right? They're not that interested in the toy anymore, and they might just put it away and not play with it again because it's basically boring. And if you think about it, you know, as parents particularly, how are we like toys? You know, as adults, if you look at all the ways that we move and we can be active and we can come to life, and, you know, the expressions that we show, all the emotions we have, you know, not just happy, glad and sad, but we all have our own unique versions of these different emotions. And we have by far the greatest number of features than any other toy. If you can imagine, you know, an electronic toy or some sort, there's no way they can have as many features as we can as a human, and particularly as their parent. And if you combine all of those features, we are the ultimate entertainment center, remote control included. And it becomes very obvious to the kids where our buttons are. They know what to turn on that remote control to get us going, don't they? Who's ever experienced that, right? Let me know in the chat. And once children have experienced those features of ours, it sets the bar for what is energetically possible with us. And when things are going right, you know, when the kids are doing the right thing, when they're being cooperative and helpful and playing nicely with their siblings, for example, we might say, you know, good job or thank you. But that's kind of like really junk food praise. And that becomes like the boring toy features in comparison to the blinking lights and the bells and the whistles that go off when negativity and non-compliance is happening. So when they're being non-compliant, or when they're breaking rules or fighting, or, you know, doing things that they shouldn't be doing, or not listening or not cooperating, that's when the favorite toy comes to life. That's when our eyes light up. That's when we get close enough for them to smell our perfume. That's when all of the expressions, you know, come to life, and our hands move and our eyes, you know, come to life. But when they're doing the right thing, we're pretty boring. We might just do that junk food, well done, good job thing, but we come to life when the children are doing the wrong thing. So when things are going right, we can be relatively boring. And that pales in comparison to those times when things are going wrong, when we come to life. So like a toy, they want to shake and rattle us to get the most out of us. And we inadvertently advertise that we give greater connectivity when things are going wrong by way of our normal and traditional methods of parenting and teaching. And when I think back not only to my parenting days when my boys were younger, but when I actually think back to my teaching days, it's exactly right. I can remember giving all the energy and connection to the kids when they were mucking up. And then the good kids were lucky if they got a good job, well done, pat on the shoulder, because I was giving so much energy to the negativity that was going on. And this actually brings me to a story that I'm going to share from my my Revolting Child, A Blessing in Disguise book. And it's a story that often brings tears to my eyes and sadness in my heart, because it's a story actually not about my younger son, but about my oldest son. And I know he's on the call tonight, and he's given me permission. You know, he did write this in the book. And Nathan, was such a quiet and compliant and cooperative kid. And he was an only child for 7.5 years. And then little brother comes along and totally disrupts our household. You know, the flow that we had and the peace and the quiet that we had in our household. So when I was about to write this book, I actually asked all of my family, my husband and my 2 boys, I asked their permission because I said that I was wanting to write this tell-all story about our family. And I asked all of them if they would contribute to the book. So my youngest son was only 15. Nathan would have been about 22 to 23. And they all wrote beautifully. Andrew wrote something beautiful. Caleb wrote something so profound, I actually made it the foreword in the book. So if you haven't read this yet, it's a must read. But I'm just going to read a little bit from Nathan's chapter. I won't read it all for time's sake, but I'm just going to read a little bit. He shared how he remembered, you know, when Caleb was born and in hospital. He remembered sharing about how, you know, stressful his first birthday was. And I might just start here and I'll just read it, I think, rather than just ad-libbing. So this is coming from Nathan as an adult, remembering back to the times when his brother was much younger. I remember when I was questioned for something that Caleb did, that I was never given the chance to really express how I felt and that no one would really listen. So I began to think that I should just keep it to myself and not bother with trying to explain because Caleb took up too much time. So I just bottled it up. I remember when I went to the psychiatrist and she suggested we get a dog. And he talked about the dog. I won't go into that story, but he found a beautiful dog, Maddie, who they became best friends. And Nathan was only 10 years old and Nathan loved Maddie so much. And she stayed with Nathan for 12 years. She was a beautiful dog. So he went on to say that, you know, Maddie was the only one that he felt he could, you know, confide in or talk to as, you know, as a little boy. And he said, since that time, I still used to think a lot of negative thoughts about myself, which even seemed to affect my friendships at school. It was almost like all the negative thoughts really came true. And we know about that, right? We know about the law of attraction. What we give most attention to, you know, expands. I just read that little quote before. So he's concurring with that. So things became pretty bad for me, both at home and at school. And once again, we were inadvertently parenting upside down. We just didn't know what we didn't know. We weren't bad parents. We weren't bad people. We loved both of our sons so much, but we just didn't know what we didn't know. I remember feeling so bad that one day I got some electrical cable. Andrew used it when he was wiring houses from the garage and put it around a branch high up in a tree and then tied it in a loop around my neck. Keep in mind, I didn't know about this until he was in his 20s. The cable was taut, but I was still leaning against the tree for support. I only had to let go or slip, and I would not be here today to share this with you. I'm not sure why I didn't go through with it, but I'm glad I didn't. I never told anyone about that till now. That's pretty tough to hear as a mum. You know, from your now adult son who you respect so much, of what happened to him when he was just a kid, you know, 12 or 13 years old. I remember growing up with Caleb was pretty hard. Sometimes it got so bad that I thought either he or I had to go. One day it got so bad that I pinned Caleb down on the floor with my foot. I wasn't sure what I was doing or what was going through my head, but it felt like I wasn't coping. I'm glad Andrew came into the room when he did in time before I did something I regretted. And he goes on a lot, and then he talks about how things have changed and how, you know, they had reconciled, keeping in mind this was written back in 2009. So, you know, sometimes if you are in a situation where you have a child who's very intense and challenging and demanding a lot of time and attention, we have to also be very mindful of the other children or the other child involved. And that's why I love the nurtured heart approach, because it's a way of communicating and relationshiping with all of our family, with all of our kids. So please, I look forward to reading the comments later. So please do share in the Facebook page, anything that's coming up for you while I'm sharing this, because I know my heart was pumping and thumping as I was reading that, and I did well to hold back the tears, because, it was tough. It really was tough. And it was tough on all of our relationships. So what, and I want you to think about now, think about your parenting career, like, in the last days or weeks or over the last little while. Think of some examples of when your buttons were pushed, things that made you react vibrantly. And if you're willing to, please share in the on the Facebook group and share how you might have felt, or what was it that really pushed your button. And think about that incident and ask yourself this question, even if you're not going to write it in the chat box, just ask yourself this question. Did you come more to life when the kids were being cooperative, well-behaved, playing quietly? So if you think about the last week and all of the things your kids have been doing, did you really come more to life when they were doing things well? Or was it in a negative situation, kids not listening, breaking rules, being uncooperative, disrespectful, or arguing, etc.? And if we were to be honest with ourselves, at least I know for me, I can't speak for everybody, but for many of us, it would be for the latter. When we were heightened by negativity is when we would come to life, when that favorite toy, the bells and the whistles and everything would be going. So yeah, hopefully that is making sense for you. Okay, so now I'm nearly done, and I'm going to hand over to Nathan. But if you really think about it, it's a bit like watering a garden. If we had some nice water and we put some nutrients or some fertilizer in the water, and we wanted to go out and water the garden, would we use that beautiful, rich, nutrient rich water to water the weeds? No, we wouldn't, because we don't want the weeds to grow more, do we? We want the flowers to grow more. So when you think about our relationships, particularly with our children, what are you watering? What are you giving energy, connection, and relationship to? Where is all of your energy going? Is it going into watering the weeds, or is it going into watering the flowers or the herbs or the veggie patch? And that's something that we really need to be very, very mindful for. And this is not to place any feelings of guilt on you if you are watering the weeds more than the flowers at the moment, because you've just heard stories from me, right? You know exactly where things were at with us. So yeah. So upside down energy, and this is how some children live their life, and it really does become a pattern for them. And kids are really clever, right? And they put two and two together on a level of how they feel things, and they're really good at picking up on energy. On our energy particularly, our response to negativity gets translated to being what they perceive as love or connected relationship, because that's when they get the connection and the relationship. And the love or the relationship flows to a greater degree when I do things that mum and dad don't like. That's how the kids perceive it, right? And sometimes kids come to think that the main time they receive focused quality time is when they've broken a rule and they get a lecture or a reprimand. Mum and dad say they love good behavior all day long, and the truth of the energy that the child deeply feels is being loved, connected more when things go wrong, because that's when mum and dad really show up. They're barely there when I do the right things. I might get a thank you or a good job at most, which we call junk food praise. So as a culture, and what we've passed down the generations, is that we try to teach rules and limits when they're being broken. And that's exactly the wrong time to do it. But that's where there is a backlash, as the energy given to the broken rules actually reinforces the undesired behavior. So that's all I'm going to cover on that today. We're going to be covering that in a lot more detail in our upcoming 9-week course. But I'm going to hand over to Nathan now. Nathan is a naturopath, a herbalist, and a nutritionist with well over a decade of clinical experience at Beyond Good Health Medical Clinic. He was trained and mentored by amazing holistic doctors, one in particular, but a couple now. He's such a detailed practitioner he researches the research and then he researches it again. And of course, not only because of his skills as a naturopath, but because of the journey that our family's been on, he understands families and he understands what they're going through, not just because of the physiological, health that he can see or not see in them, but because he's lived the journey. He's lived it as a big brother, right? He's seen the stresses and the struggles that we've been through. So so I can change the screen for you if you like, Nathan, or whatever you'd rather do. If you want to do the pages yourself, just go for it. But I'll click on the first one and over to you, Nathan. And maybe, Nathan, before you start sharing, we've got about 20 minutes left and I just need about a few minutes left at the end. Maybe you might like to share firstly why you became a naturopath.
I've always loved how things work and I love the ins and outs. And before it was humans, it was computers. But midway through high school, I, as you've just been told, had a turmoil in the household and stress, and life was upside down with a new sibling. And so I witnessed the change that my parents had brought into our family through speaking with all these experts and implementing the things that they recommended. And I watched them in front of hundreds of families turn up to Rotary clubs. Even tonight came, and I saw the change and impact they had on those lives of those parents, those families. And I just thought, I want that too. Yes, I'm great at computers, but I want those messages. I want that as well. I want to be told you've made a big difference. Thank you so much for changing our life. So halfway through year 10 or 11, I swapped to all health sciences and then did my 5.5 years straight at uni. And it wasn't really until halfway through 10 years, I guess 11 years of practice, that I even really start to understand that a lot of the conditions that we're seeing come from the mindset. The languaging used during childhood is so important. It forms our self-belief and self-worth and self-esteem, that if we at the same time have a few other biochemical processes off, then that can be the difference between making it and being a really academic student, or just really enjoying life and being very creative, being successful, forming good relationships, or putting too much pressure on yourself and self-harming or self-worth, or not getting attention from parents and then taking it out on the kids at school. So a big part of that I'm going to speak about tonight is something called methylation and pyrrole disorder. So again, our brain is the one secreting these neurotransmitters like serotonin, noradrenaline, GABA, and dopamine. And we are making these from what we put in. So if what you're putting in is not very good, you don't have a very good reservoir of these nutrients available for our brain to say, we're in a stressful state. We need some serotonin to feel good, or some, GABA to feel calm. If we don't have the resources available, we can't make them. And if our gut is compromised, if there's something wrong with our gut, we have leaky gut, we've got fungus, we've got parasites, then again, that's not a very good environment to make all these amazing neurotransmitters that is basically controlling how we feel. Next slide. So once we've got these, sometimes someone can feel either too up or too down. And I guess the two up are the neurotransmitters that are too excitatory. These are the people and children that, are misdiagnosed with ADHD or ODD, and they're just, hyperactive. But sometimes they just have a lot of energy, and inside, if you could see what was happening, they're like a pinball in a pinball machine. It's like they can't contain it. What you see on the outside is a very small reflection of what's actually happening on the inside. And so we sometimes have a little bit too many neurotransmitters that are excitatory. Or on the other hand, we have too many of the depressive neurotransmitters, the ones that calm everything down, but they calm us down too far. And we become slow and dull, and we have a lack of excitement or motivation or even depression. So there is about 10% that the genes are responsible for, and sometimes we have a stronger ability to make particular neurotransmitters to compensate for a particular situation that you're involved in. You could even have like a sibling, two siblings, very similar ages, and the same thing happens to them, and they'll have complete different reactions. And it just happens to be what genes were responsible at that time that enabled their body or their brain to understand the situation at hand, and what did it do to make them feel calm, safe, or relaxed about it. So the other thing that I find that also affects this is oxidative stress, because oxidative stress is what is burning through all these resources, all the nutrients. So again, if you weren't topping them up every day through the diet and having a really good gut to absorb them and make the neurotransmitters, and you had oxidation at the same time burning through them quicker, then no wonder you just don't have the ability for you to be calm. And we see your children, throwing a tantrum or just being very aggressive or very sad and depressed. They don't wake up thinking, I'm going to be like this today. That's just what happens in their body. So something called epigenetics is virtually what we referred to as junk genes. We didn't understand them initially when we mapped the human genome. But now epigenetics is external influences on our genes. And so these can switch things on or off at any time. But it happens to be both good and bad genes that epigenetics can affect. So sometimes it can affect the healing of our body, the growth, protection, repair. And again, if methylation is out, then we're much more prevalent to the bad genes being switched on or off through epigenetics, because the body is running on such a tight string of having just enough to maintain homeostasis, balance, that it's doing all it can. It's more temperamental to stress or anything epigenetic. So some of the examples when I say stress is obviously genes themselves. So epigenetically, if we were more prone not to getting, certain green leafy vegetables, getting the folate out of it, we might have a MTHFR gene dysfunction. Or as you were growing up and the parents were busy, they were trying to provide for the family and at work all the time, and they didn't give very, what the child thought or perceived as love and attention, then there is psychological stresses and emotional stresses. And then if that happens again and again, when they get older, if it happens, then their brain goes back to the first few times when it happened, and it forms stronger and stronger connections with that event, with that word, with that smell, with that taste, the first time it happened. And you can see a child go from like perfectly calm to like 100 miles an hour out of proportion tantrum. It wasn't because of that point right there and then. It was because of all the times that's happened in the past. And so again, this can be epigenetic, and it links in with the genes and our parenting. Next slide. So how is oxidative stress, which you can get from many things like smoking, alcohol, taking drugs, how is that then linked with pyrrole disorder? Well, oxidative stress can be things in our body, not always things outside the body. So there can be viruses, there can be pathogens, there can be toxins. You can start a reaction in the body that sort of cascades into many other reactions that all of a sudden depletes everything up. It's like when you cut an apple in half and it starts to oxidize, the apple is using all of its antioxidants to try and protect its cells, and at some point it has none left. The oxidation in the air has overpowered the antioxidants in the apple, and now it's going brown and it's oxidizing. That happens to our cells. Again, doesn't have to be smoking, alcohol, or drugs. It can be stress, psychological or physical, over exercising, eating the wrong foods. These are all things that contribute towards oxidative stress. So a really good website to check what sort of burden we are under all the time is bodyburden.org. They showed that 287 chemicals were detected in umbilical cord blood. So they were testing basically after mothers had their children, they tested what was in the umbilical cord, and they found that the babies are being born toxic. All the toxins from the mum were ending up in the baby. A lot of the chemicals in our body, they found 180 contribute towards cancer, and 217 were toxic to the brain and nervous system. So again, we're born with this massive oxidative stress load that if there is a few genes that are not perfect, that puts you at a disadvantage, or your children at a disadvantage dealing with other stresses in life. So it's really important the ones we can control, we do. Next slide. So I explain pyrrole disorder as, the technical thing is we make hemoglobin, for example, and as a byproduct of making hemoglobin, we make cryptopyrroles. And if we have a gene dysfunction, we have more cryptopyrroles being created than someone else. Now, because they trigger oxidative stress, they're removing a lot of zinc and B6. So if you wanted to have an analogy, a watering can full of zinc and B6 and manganese and omega-6, and pyrrole disorder is like having holes at the bottom. This type of oxidative stress, they're leaking all these neurotransmitters that the body needs to feel calm and stable and in control. So that's pyrrole disorder, and it can be tested through urine test. Methylation, on the other hand, everyone methylates, but we need to have that fine balance, not too high, not too low for our neurotransmitters, just right. So it also turns genes on and off. Methylation is almost like if the DNA says, I need a function to happen, but I need a quick way of finding how to make this function happen because it's a time-sensitive thing. The methylation is almost like a bookmark. It's like, here's the process, all the instructions, how to do it properly. And the DNA says, great, now I know what to do to make that action happen. If you're an undermethylator, which 22% of the population are, then this process is much slower. It's kind of like sat at traffic lights and both are red. Irritated, angry, frustrated, short-tempered, depressed, you're undermethylating. If the process is too quick, then you're an overmethylator, which is far less, but about 8% of the population. Think of this as two green traffic lights. There's chaos, there's mania. You can't sit still, you can't stop your mind, it's going too fast, you can't relax, you feel stress all the time. These are overmethylators. So some of the things that we use to help with anxiety and depression is SSRIs or SAMe and methionine supplements. But if you're already an overmethylator, these are all methyl donors, and you're or an inhibitor in the SSRIs case. You're overdriving this already going too fast methylation cycle. So that's why it's always good to test before you try and treat, because Dr. Google doesn't always get it right. Sometimes you can have the symptoms of overmethylator, but actually your body's undermethylating and just compensating. And this one is a blood test. We can do usually at a pathology lab in Queensland or usually in other states. So that MTHFR gene I was talking about before is just one of the 15 genes involved in methylation, controlling the information that comes into your brain and helping your body understand what to do with it. To feel calm, feel relaxed, or do you feel like hitting someone, or feel like exploding, or feel like crying or hurting yourself, or not being able to make eye contact, or feel emotion. This is all methylation. So in a nutshell, every stress has a compounding effect on our mental well-being. If we have nutritional deficiencies like zinc and B6 and other methyl donors, too much copper, then this makes this balance much harder for the body to cope with. If you start taking certain supplements full of folic acid, for example, and you have this MTHFR gene dysfunction, and you're more prone to depression, then you're probably going to get a lot worse. So Sometimes food is all it takes to stay healthy, but unfortunately these days, because the food's not really grown in nutrient-dense soil and our guts are not the best, we do need to supplement for a while, but it's important that you do it correctly. So what are some of the things you can do as of right now? Obviously, eating a diet full of good proteins and good fats, along with all phytonutrients from all the very colorful veggies and fruit, is going to help with the building blocks of all these amino acids for the neurotransmitters to be created. Now, every cell has this lipid bilayer that receives signals, and that's where we need good fats. So often when I'm going through patients' diets, they're just not eating enough good fats. They're deficient in fats, and they have too many omega-6 fats, which comes from grains and nuts and seeds, and not enough good omega-3 fats, which comes from things like hemp oil, fish, and algae. The other thing is trying to avoid the oxidative stress, these epigenetic effects. So living a low toxic life. How long has it been since you've done a house detox and gone through all your personal care, cleaning chemicals, and made sure that there's nothing in there that's harmful? And don't be fooled by the all natural ingredients on the bottle, because just because something became from nature does not mean that it is actually healthy. So we want to check all of our labels. And if you do have signs of anxiety or depression, or your children are being labeled with ADHD, ADD, autism, on the spectrum, whatever it might be, then testing for pyrrole disorder and methylation, including zinc, copper, ceruloplasmin, and histamine, is going to be a good start of, okay, what do we do next? So that's a very quick rundown of methylation and pyrrole disorder and some of the other effects that may affect your children and what you can do about it.
Thank you so much, Nathan. Just stay on for a moment, because that was amazing. And even though I've heard you speak about this so many times, it's all pretty techie or medically kind of discussed or shared with us this evening. But just a couple of quick things before we finish off tonight. Self-harming seems to be at epidemic rates at the moment for young people, self-harming and depression. So would you consider that the pyrrole and the methylation testing or issues that you talked about would be something that parents could look at, as well as the parenting and relationshiping kind of stuff that they need to do?
Definitely. Yeah.
Yeah. And Nathan, if anybody listening in live or to a replay would like a consultation, and I know there'll probably be people from all around the country, and we've got Karina who's on from Ireland on Zoom with us. So do you offer online consultations for people?
Yeah, we can do Zoom consultations. I do that at the clinic all the time. We have patients all over Australia and the world, and so we do Zoom.
Okay, awesome. Thank you, Nathan. I think it was really important for Nathan to go into a little bit more detail about this, because when we did the last masterclass, and he touched on pyrrole and methylation, I had a few people reach out to me and say, oh my gosh, I don't understand. What is that? My doctor doesn't know about it. I even had somebody who said they went and asked their doctor about it and their doctor had no idea. So it's quite interesting that not everybody is aware or familiar with this. And when I, talk about my parenting formula, it is all about, relationships and language and parenting, but it is also about the diet. It is also about toxins. It is also about self-esteem and self-worth. It is also about seeing, where the physiology of the body is. It's not just one thing. It's like baking a cake. You've got to put all the ingredients in to have a happy and healthy physical and emotional body, because we're not just talking about a healthy physical body. As a matter of fact, with parenting, we're probably talking more about emotional health than even physical health, but we want to be happy and healthy physically and emotionally. I'm sure you would all agree. So I did promise that we would get this done in 60 minutes. So I've got just a couple of minutes left. So who here listening in live, let me know on the Facebook page, and Nathan is popping all of your names in the prize wheel. Karina's here with us on Zoom as well, Nathan. So if you haven't made yourself known on Facebook yet, please do that so Nathan can see your name. But who here listening in live, or if you're listening to the replay, would love to enjoy a happy and healthier home and children, even if you think it's pretty good already, right? Who feels like it could improve? Who feels like they could make things better? And you may not relate to these, but you may. You know, if you're sick and tired of the yelling, nagging and threats, which I definitely was, if you crave a closer, more respectful relationship with your children, if you want to gain cooperation with children rather than control, if you want your children to be both happy and healthy today and growing into their adult years. So it's not just about your relationship with them today, but it's forevermore. As far as I'm concerned, it's until my box day. If you want to enjoy your day-to-day interactions with your children, if you just want your kids to listen and follow simple instructions, or if you want to know that when your kids are grown up and they have kids, that you will still be super connected, then you will definitely want to come and join us in our upcoming Nurtured Heart Approach course. Now, I have got quite a few people booked in. There are a couple of spots left if you are wanting to come and join us next week. So I'll just quickly run through this week with you. It will be 9 weeks. It will take us from October the 25th up to December the 20th. So just in time for an amazing Christmas and school holidays with the kids. So we will be in a private community on a private page where all of the information about the course will be shared. Nathan will be coming on for one of the weeks, or maybe even dropping in a couple of times. So we're going to do an introductory week. We're going to do 6 solid training weeks on the Nurtured Heart approach. We're going to do a health and wellness week, and then we're going to do a celebration Q&A and ask questions and fine tune what you're doing week. So there's going to be lots of information. You get sent, an online workbook, and we connect both on Facebook and on email, and we get together live each Monday. So if you can't make it each Monday live, you can watch the replays. You'll get sent the replays directly after. However, it is more beneficial to get on live because it is quite interactive, and people actually get to really connect in with each other and help and support each other. So I actually put this price together as a result of the Education Youth Summit that I participated in recently. It's normally quite a few $100s more than that. So that is actually a special price of $497 US. And I think if you do your conversions, that's about 682 AUD, or about 363 Great British pounds for over in the UK. So that's the upfront price. If you would like a payment plan, we can do a 12-week payment plan of $49 US a week. Or if you need to change that payment plan, I don't care if we take it over 20 weeks, whatever it takes. I have negotiated with a couple of people who wanted to take the payment plan out a bit further. I'm happy to do that because at the end of the day, I just want you to be able to benefit and pay for it, what you can afford. So we've got 10 spots available. I think we have about 4 spots left. So if you are wanting to join us for next Monday, by the way, one membership for this course does the whole family. We often have a parent and their parent join, so grandparent, parent and kids. So if you are parenting with your parenting partner in the same home, you can both join. If they're in a different home, you can both join. If there is another key person who connects and communicates with the children, then they can join. I don't mind how many people in the family who are connected to co-parenting the child, or like a grandparent who just really wants to support their child. You are very welcome to join under one membership. So we are starting 1 week today, 1 week away today. It'll be every Monday over the next 9 weeks. We'll be doing it at 7 p.m. Australian Eastern Standard Time, because it will be 90 minutes. And I wanted to be mindful of the Victorian people and the New South Wales people, that it didn't get too late for them. So 7 till 8:30 for us here in Queensland. 8 till 9:30 in Victoria and New South Wales, and anybody in the UK, it will be there, I think 10 a.m. in the morning. And yeah, so it's going to be awesome. We left in the love bomb. This was the love bomb from when I did the last masterclass, and I've left it in there, so I can't take it away now. So if you purchase your course within the next 24 hours, you'll also receive a holiday voucher valued up to $1,000. And we're going to actually give one away this evening to somebody. And if you win that one, you can actually get a second one. You can, somebody else in your family can receive the second voucher. So Nathan, just wondering if you've got the names in the prize wheel, and if so, we can maybe you can share your screen again, and we can show everybody how that works.
Yes, I've got them all in there. So I'm just about to click. Let's double check in Facebook. No one else has said anything. Great. Here we go.
We can't see your screen, Nathan. We can't see your screen, Nathan.
Whoops, sorry. You're sharing yours, so I can't, but that's okay. Sharon.
No, I'll stop sharing.
Camelo is the winner.
Oh, Sharon. Yay, Sharon. Well, Sharon really deserves it because she has been the biggest supporter and fan, and she has really been out there sharing this with everybody and helping to promote this. So well done, Sharon. You can share this with your family and enjoy another little break away. So thank you, Nathan, for doing that. Much appreciated. Thank you, Karina, who's just left on Zoom. And thank you to everybody who tuned in live. I know it was a bit of an impromptu thing that I just decided to do last week, but I felt that it was really important to just touch base again before we start our course. So once again, if you're listening in live or if you're listening to the replay and you would like to join us in this course, but you've still got some questions, please reach out. I'm happy to have a quick chat with you on the phone or on Zoom to answer your questions. Or if you're ready to go, Nathan, perhaps you could put on the Facebook page, please, the registration link for the course. If you want to do the upfront discounted one, you can do it on that registration link or the payment plan, or alternatively, if you just wanted a direct deposit, you can reach out and do it that way. Or if you'd like to change the payment plan to suit, we can do that as well. So that's it from me. Thank you so much, everybody, for tuning in. I'll go through and read all of your feedback later. If you have any questions, oh, hey, Sammy, if you have any questions, please do pop them in the Facebook and I'll come back and answer them later. But thank you again for tuning in. Thank you, Nathan, for sharing tonight, and really appreciate you all jumping on. And remember, if you are inclined to come and join us, we've got about 3 spots left for 3 or 4 spots left, I think, for the course starting next week. Reach out. If you do that within 24 hours, you will also receive a holiday voucher valued up to $1,000 that you can use anytime over the next, is it 18 months, Nathan, I think?
Yes, you activate it within a month, tell us where you'd like to go, we generate it for you, and then you've got 2 years to basically book it. And then
Okay.
I guess you could book it 6 months after the, at the 2 year period. So it could be, 2.5 years away that you actually travel. So plenty of time.
Fantastic. Thank you, Nathan. I might just leave you to say the last final words and then we'll sign off. Thank you.
Thank you very much, everyone. I trust that you got a lot out of that. Quick, short, but information-packed full masterclass. And we really love doing these and providing value for you all. And we also love when you share and give this recording to those who weren't able to jump on tonight. If you've got other friends, other family that you thought in your mind, I think this information would be a great value for them, then please do share that with them as well. We appreciate it.
Thanks, everybody. Enjoy the rest of your evening. Thank
Bye.
you. Bye.